would like to talk about Disney. Specifically, I would like to talk about Disney as a company and how they have handled LGBTQ anything, whether it be on screen or off. This is coming on the heels of what is colloquially known as Florida's Don't Say Gay Bill, but is actually titled their Parental Rights and Education Bill, as well as just honestly legislation that is going on across the entire country that is anti-LGBTQ+, very specifically anti-trans, and kind of vaguely anti anyone who is gender nonconforming, and is focused on children, which is really despicable. These bills are hateful, and arguments against them are honestly, I want to be kind and say they're in bad faith and or ignorant, but again, let's be clear, this is bigotry and those arguments are hateful. I get that there are people who are ignorant who really just don't understand, but it's 2022. Get over it and fucking Google. Like, this is not hard. So I'm going to begin with talking about some of the legislation that's happening, integrate that into a little bit of Disney's history on screen and why their response to Chapek's response to DeSantis really is not surprising to me. And then I'll wrap things up. This will be very long. I will be looking at my computer a lot because there are a lot of things I want to quote and a lot of bullet points I want to make sure I'm hitting. So if you get distracted by someone looking down at their notes, this is not the video for you. Okay, may the shark be with us. Let's get into it. I'll start with the depressing stuff first and talk about some of this legislation that's happening. Again, this is all across the country. This is not just Florida and Texas. It's Idaho, Tennessee, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, all over the country. And there are three main things that are kind of going on. A lot of these states are trying to ban trans girls from playing in girls' sports. So they're essentially making it very difficult, if not impossible, specifically for trans girls, but probably also likely for trans boys to play sports in school. Another thing that's happening is they are making it very difficult, or if not impossible, for trans children to get gender affirming treatment. And that's just so reductive and disgusting and wrong. They are making it so that a lot of the parents would be considered abusing their child, and the doctors could be considered to be doing malpractice. I don't really understand. Some of these states are making it then illegal to leave the state and go to a different state to get treatment for their child, which is clearly beyond the scope of jurisdiction. So I'm not sure what the point of that is. Oftentimes, states like this will pass legislation. We see this a lot with abortion. They want it to go to courts, because then if it's going to court, it has an opportunity to go to the Supreme Court, and then at that point, there's an option for justices to overturn something like Roe v. Wade. So they want bills like this to go to courts, to go to high courts, and they want these things to be made legal so that they can do this all across the country and just be really hateful, discriminatory bigots. But I don't understand then why they're including things that's never gonna happen. Like state jurisdiction is state jurisdiction. That's no Supreme Court justice will ever rule in favor for that. And we see this in, for instance, Texas. Governor Abbott released that directive. The same thing, you can't leave the state to get your child gender affirming healthcare. And a district judge, Metcham, issued an injunction indicating that this is beyond his scope of jurisdiction. And I'm assuming a lot of other bills that are happening in Florida, Idaho, Tennessee, Louisiana, Arizona, again, all over the country, but these are the ones I specifically looked up, will have similar injunctions coming soon. I know the ACLU is fighting a lot of these. But that's just two of the things. The other one is a lot of them are like Florida, the like parental right and education kind of thing, or Louisiana named it the Save Adolescents from Experimentation. Stuff like that, where it happens in schools where teachers are not allowed to have any kind of material that is related to the LGBTQ in any way. So like you can't have a test question that's like, Mary and her two moms, like that would be considered illegal. Or if a child says that they're, gay or trans or anything along those lines, the teachers are supposed to report that child to their parent. In Louisiana, it specifically says that they're supposed to report that to their parent, even if it seems their parent would be intolerant. Like, they're literally advocating for child abuse. Like, it's so disgusting. And traumatizing for these poor students. But also, this doesn't just hurt young children. This hurts teenagers. This hurts young adults. It hurts everyone in the queer community and the trans community and everyone across the LGBTQ community. But also, like, to be clear, like, discrimination hurts society as a whole. It does not benefit society to have oppressed groups of people. Okay, right. So these bills, this legislation, they're all homophobic and transphobic, and the arguments, as I said, against them they're just in bad faith, or they're just very ignorant or outright hateful, but trying to hide that under the guise of religion. And I'll be honest, I respect people's beliefs right up until the point where you use your belief as a shield for your hatred and bigotry. At that point, you don't get a pass. You're just a bigot. Fuck off. Excuse my language. Okay. So a lot of the arguments I see against this are mind-boggling. But the biggest one I see is that, and I'm quoting because I saw this all over the place, is that you're exposing children to sex by acknowledging the existence of queer people. You are exposing children to sex. So has that child never seen a married couple? Like their parents, their grandparents, any neighbors, anyone? They've never seen a married couple? If they have seen a married couple, did that expose them to sex? No. Does the child have a younger sibling? Like, did that expose them to sex? Not necessarily. Hopefully not. And to be clear, like, telling a child, like, where babies come from, for instance, that's not child abuse. Like, sex is a thing. A child can know that sex exists. I mean, there's a clear line of what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. Like, showing a child anything like that, inappropriate. Acknowledging it exists is not inappropriate. Like, as a child, I knew, like, what sex was. Like, that's how reproduction happens. I was aware of those things. It is not inappropriate for a child to be aware of those things. It really is not going to mess a kid up. Giving a child accurate information is not inappropriate. And also, having a child see a couple, whether they're heteronormative or a queer couple, is not exposing them to sex. It's just literally not. Moving on. We need to stop using the word homosexual. And that's not just me saying that. GLAAD has had that on their do not use list since 2006. A lot of people equate queer relationships to having sex, and that's not a fucking thing. The motto is, I said this on someone's podcast, like, the motto isn't fucking is fucking, it's love is love. No one's asking kids to see gay sex scenes. Like, again, if seeing a married couple, did that expose a child to anything other than the fact that relationships exist? No. So, what? But also the word homosexual, again, it's outdated. Also, it was used in the DSM-3, I think, as like a medical condition. It's just very old. I don't know anyone who's actually in the LGBTQ plus community who uses that word or term. If you're out there using that term, you're not on it. You're not on it. You're not with it. Stop using it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, a lot of these bills, they're trying to make, particularly the ones about in kids in school, specifically like Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, but there are other similar bills going on in other states as well. These bills are trying to make queer people invisible. I think it's always important to look at, why was this law made and who does it affect? What was the intention? The intention of this bill is to make queer people invisible. They see queerness as like something kids hear about that's trendy, and so they'll come out as being gay or trans or gender nonconforming, And that's a bad thing that you don't want kids to do. You don't want people to do that. And that's really gross. Like it's just really gross. This hurts queer and trans kids, teens, parents, just all across the board. This hurts the LGBTQ plus community. I'll get a little more into that below. Representation matters, even if it's just in a test question, because it normalizes an oppressed and marginalized group of people. And on a side note, we just gender too much. Like when I remember as a kid, every question was he or she, and I would like aggressively race it and write they. But they're not fully wrong. Gender identity, for instance, is very complicated. It is very difficult but also like sexual orientation is very complicated. It's difficult to see yourself as anything other than the lens in which everyone else views you, and as something beyond or outside the terms you've been given. If your whole life, all you've been given is straight and cis, you might just feel different or like something's wrong with you because you don't even know that trans or non-binary or gay or bisexual or pansexual or whatever exist. That's fucking sad. And it's unfortunate. And that is a reason why a lot of people experience, or that's one reason why a lot of people experience a lot of issues in their youth, who don't know that there is something out there that they are, but also there's a community out there they can be a part of, and also they're not told that that's totally fine and it is normal and it's natural and you're not any less for it. These bills specifically say that they want to tell people you are less, and that less is not okay. Again, that's just so wrong. There's also this idea that's like, people are like turned gay. No, it's not how it works. So like most people, I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, and I can't even imagine what this was like for people older than me. But there wasn't much in terms of information, especially at school, but also like in the media about queer people. And what there was always in the negative, like kids at school saying, oh, that's so gay. If you watched SNL, I'll link it below. Kate McKinnon was on Weekend Update and talking about how she thought the bill, the Don't Say Gay bill, was basically like that. Like kids at school were not allowed to say, oh, like that's so gay, don't be gay and stuff like that. Which, okay, I'd be cool with that. Like, let's stop using that in the negative. And I remember a commercial in the mid 2000 and the early aughts. I don't know what that period of time between 2000 and 2010 called. I remember like 2008, there were commercials with a lot of queer celebrities advocating for like kids to stop saying that because it's not cool. Like, you remember those like really bad commercials on like Nickelodeon and stuff? But anyway, yes. So it was always in the negative. It was kids saying stuff like that. I remember I was in a debate class and we were debating like same-sex marriage at the time, which was not legal where I lived. And my religious peers were like openly talking about how being gay was wrong and a sin and such like that. And that kind of stuff just makes people feel really badly about themselves. I remember leaving that class like every day, like so defeated. But like with all that negativity, like it didn't change who I am, and I don't think that changes who anybody was. It might make people more apt to like hide who they are, but it doesn't change who they are. So not being exposed to queer and trans people doesn't make people straight and cis. It doesn't. Okay, so this is one that kind of bothers me, and it's a little weird, and you might not understand where I'm coming from with this. So I'll do my best to explain it, but it's like, at what age is this appropriate? These bills are purposely written in a way to be vague. Our country is set up that our laws are written. And they're written in a lot of detail. When you have a vague law, they do it purposefully so that it can be as broad and as hateful as possible. And that is so very effing wrong. So this idea that like kids become gay is ridiculous. Like the saying is born this way for a damn reason. People don't understand that even straight kids at some point realized they're straight. It's just because straight is considered the norm, they don't have to think about it. That just to them seems like an automatic. They never had to give a lot of thought and consideration to the fact that they are straight. It's like that scene in Love, Simon where they have like coming out as straight, which would be funny. But you know, you don't just go from like a default straight to gay when you're like 10, 12, 14, or whenever you start getting crushes. No offense to ace people. But like, you don't just become that. You weren't like straight and then you started to get a crush on someone of the same sex as you, so now you're gay. That's no. You weren't straight to begin with. It just took you to the point where you started getting crushes to realize that. And it's only realized that that's something that's different is because it's made to be different by like bills like this. Like queer is made to be a minority because of bills like this. Oh, yeesh. Okay, and the last point here I want to talk about is when there is media, it often has quoted queer villains. I guess like Be Gay, Do Crime. And they have like bury your gays, and they show like gay men with AIDS or like fetishized lesbians. It often is showing gay and trans people as having very marginalized and tragic life, and that is, to be clear, bad representation. I have a litmus test for it. And I kind of wanted to contrast something like The Danish Girl with something like Netflix's new show, Guardians of Justice. So we don't learn about like LGBTQ history in school, like even when it matters. So in The Danish Girl, we're shown this, I don't remember the character's name, I should have looked it up, but we're shown, you know, this woman character. She was a real person? Whatever. I think she was a real person. So we were shown this woman or character as living in Germany at a certain time period during the Weimar Republic, as being alone and isolated, and seeing them their self as being like other. But like during the Weimar Republic, there were like trans passes. This is like Greenwich in New York, or you know, this is like San Francisco or Orlando. This was a queer hub, particularly trans hub, and that was not seen as like being horribly bad. Like they were allowed, like men and women were allowed to have trans passes so they could dress as, you know, in gender affirming clothing, which, you know, clothing back then, you know, like women had to wear dresses and men had to wear pants and that kind of thing. So they were allowed to dress as their, you know, true selves. But like the movie doesn't show that, does it? No, it makes this character fucking tragic as hell. And it wasn't until Nazi Germany rising in 1933 that, you know, that got destroyed. And something there we don't learn about. In the Holocaust, you know, millions of Jewish people were killed, and that's not something that should be ignored. But other ethnic minorities were targeted as well, and queer and trans people were targeted too. But we don't learn about that. You know, how are you going to learn about Oscar Wilde and not mention, you know, his lavender hours and the fact that, you know, he went to court and basically got exiled? How are we not going to talk about, I mean, I guess I get not talking about Stonewall, but you don't talk about these really important Supreme Court cases where people, you know, stood up for their rights and won cases. And we don't learn about, you know, like in first and second wave feminism, we barely learn about second wave feminism at all. We learn about first wave, but we don't learn about the Lavender Menace. Or we don't learn about that as it pertains the Lavender Scare, and when we're learning about the Red Scare. You know, all these things where it's like queer people are being discriminated against right alongside other groups of people, particularly Black and Jewish people, and, you know, they get talked about, but queer people don't. When, like, it's right there, but those are always left out of the history books. The only time we learned about anything regarding queer people at the school I went to anyway was when we were learning about AIDS. Which, how messed up is that? We don't learn any positives because people in power don't want us to know that there are positives. And also, just history isn't just whitewashed, it's masculinized, and it's made straight, and it's made cis. There's no default sex orientation, but there is power dynamic, and there is control. When we have, women started to be able to go and become archaeologists, and we're looking at sites, there are all these men who are like, oh, this group of people have come up, thousands of years ago with, this calendar. And a woman looked at it and she said, no, I think this is a woman keeping track of her menstrual cycle. And those men never thought about that. I don't know which group was right or whatever, but there's a different perspective in that. When we have people looking up and transcribing ancient mythology, all these straight cis men were like, okay, this is the story. And then a woman came up and said, oh, Achilles, he gay though. What? Come on. It's obvious. Look at this language. Look at how they're describing this. This is not a straight relationship, but all these straight men never even thought about it. So I'm going back to the Danish girl, in contrast to Guardians of Justice. I know, it took me a really long time to bring it back. In Guardians of Justice, going back to my litmus test, we do have a barrier gay. However, this character took their own life. But they took their own life not because they're queer, but because society made it impossible for this person, this powerful superhero person who'd saved people's lives over and over and over again. These same people made it impossible for him to be who he is. That's a good story. This did in terms of like LGBTQ and themes and toxic masculinity with the power that I wanted to do. Guardians of Justice did it right. And there was no question about this person took their life purely because they weren't allowed to actually be who they are. They were living a fakeness and behind a mask, and they couldn't do it anymore because it was too painful for them. And it was really sad and really beautiful. And I definitely recommend this show, Guardians of Justice. Check it out. Okay. So what I'm trying to communicate here is representation really matters. Visibility absolutely matters. Safe spaces matter, especially for young people. The depression and suicide rates are not higher for the LGBTQ plus community just because being gay or trans comes with depression. No, it's because being queer and trans, even in 2022, is still vilified. And it's made other, and people are hated for it by bigots. And I want to be clear, those people are bigots, and they're bad people. I used to try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but you can only give people so much before it's just like, no, you're a douche. And they're trying to make being trans illegal, which is just so wrong. And as seen by all the aforementioned bills, that's what they're trying to do. Society makes it hard to be who they are, to be who they were born. And that's wrong. And every group should ally against that. Which brings me to Disney. Okay, so if the last part was long, this part's going to be woo. So Disney, behind the scenes, Disney, the company, has donated a lot of money to politicians who approved of and advocated for this bill. They donated close to $1 million to Republicans in Florida. They did donate quite a lot to Democrats in Florida as well, but 3 times as much to the Republicans. Specifically, they donated, I think, about $50,000 to Bob Chapek. I'm so sorry, to DeSantis. CEO of Disney is Bob Chapek. They donated money to Governor DeSantis. Okay, I'm so bad with names. So Bob Chapek released this statement promising to halt donations to said politicians, and I'm sorry, that's not enough. In a Variety article, I'm quoting what Chapek said, Governor DeSantis committed to me that he wanted to make sure that this law could not be weaponized. That's the only thing that it does, bro. In any way by any individuals in the state or groups in the state to unduly harm or target gay, lesbian, non-binary, transgender kids or families. That's bullshit. I don't think you can't be the CEO of a company and claim to be that stupid. No, absolutely not. So anyway, yeah, they said they're going to halt their donations, but again, that's not enough. And they have made donations to LGBTQ plus like organizations, but again, still not enough. But I want to talk more about what they've done on screen. And I'm putting their performative Disney rainbow merchandise during Pride Month aside to talk about their movies. Let's talk queer-coded villains. So many. Stop. Just stop. Scar, Ursula. I would include Elsa. Kind of both those chicks from Raya and the Last Dragon, although only one of them was a villain. Yeah, so many queer-coded villains, and that kind of continues to other and make queer people seem more mischievous and evil, and it aims to make people seem, it aims to make straight audiences uncomfortable is what it does, and they need to stop with that nonsense. But also, side note, having Melissa McCarthy play Ursula, I'm sorry, that's just offensive. Whatever. Anyway. Also, their slew of first queer characters. 8. They have over 8. They need to stop. Oh my god, they need to stop. So I'm quoting an article here. 8 times, give or take, Cruella, Onward, Beauty and the Beast, Jungle Cruise, Rise of Skywalker, Zootopia, Toy Story 4, and Avengers Endgame all feature minor characters who make exceedingly subtle references hinting at same-sex attraction. I would like to add in queer baiting, also Loki. Loki and the queer baiting in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the erasure of Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok, the debacle that was Luca, and also having Turning Red come out right after Luca, which features children about the same age. So on Luca, they said, they're too young. But in Turning Red, you have a girl the same age as Luca and a year younger than Alberto, having huge crushes on boys. So which is a Pixar? Is 13 too young to have a crush, or is 13 not too young to have a crush? I thought so. Douchebags. In Eternals, we did get a queer kiss, but not before we got a heterosex scene. Okay. So it just makes me honestly really worried about the Young Avengers, because we've already been introduced to Wiccan, but like, what is even the point of doing the Young Avengers if they're not going to have Wiccan and Hulkling be a couple? Like, there's literally no point to it. It pisses me off. But there's just so many like first queer Disney characters. Those are the kind of the main ones. Specifically with Loki, though, I did want to mention one thing. I think they're kind of exploiting bi and pan representation, and this is not an indictment on bi and pan people. This is an indictment on the company. With a lot of queer representation in these movies, it's like blink and you'll miss it. It could be easily misunderstood. It could be easily missed if, I don't know, that's the moment you left to go to the bathroom or something. It can also, more importantly, be easily cut out if they want to release it to a company or to a country that is anti-queer or trans, like China, for instance. I guess Russia probably isn't an issue right now, but a lot of places like overseas where the country's governments won't allow movies in if they have any kind of queer representation in them. Yeah, bow down to homophobia for money. I mean, I guess that's what Disney does anyway, but whatever. The issue with making Loki bi is that Disney can say, okay, we did something subtle in a sentence, in a scene that was super quick, that I know people who misinterpreted it and didn't realize that Loki was saying a bit of both meant that he has been with men and women. But yeah, there you go. There's your representation, breadcrumbs. But then they had him still kiss and fall in love with a female and have a heteronormative kiss. So by having bi and pan identities, they can still just only portray heteronormativity. And that's not good enough. That's not good enough. No one's out there making legislation against, heteronormative couples or anything like that. So just, that's not enough. It's just not. Additionally, in terms of sex, we see a clipboard that has Loki's information on it at the TVA, and it says that he's sex fluid. Here's the issue with that. Or they even showed it on the promo, which was very annoying, and it got people really excited, because I would be excited to see a gender fluid, or in his case, because he is a shapeshifter, sex fluid, Loki. I keep saying he for a reason, because Loki is only ever referred to in male language or masculine language. I can language sometimes in masculine language, and further, Loki's only ever portrayed as a dude. I mean, he's shapeshifted into other dudes, but only dudes. Sylvie is supposed to be a female version of Loki, but Sylvie seems like she is only referred to in the feminine and only really exists in the feminine, but it seems like she started off as a child in the feminine, like she was born female. So this is just like if in another universe you were born in the opposite sex that you are now. So that's not sex fluid at all. And that's really bothersome, and I do think that was gender baiting and very inappropriate for Disney to include in their promotional materials, because it made people think that they were going to get something they weren't. Oh, even their names. It's Sylvie Laufey daughter, female, Loki Laufey son, male. Also, if for people who are adopted, why would you name them their parent that gave them up, that they've never actually known or had? Why would they not be Loki Laufey son and Loki Odin son and Sylvie Odin daughter? There's a lot of issues with representation in Loki. Although I did like the show, the acting's phenomenal, there is issues with how they portrayed all this. Moving on to Love, Simon, and more importantly, Love, Victor. They're on Hulu, not on Disney Plus. So I understood at the beginning when they said it's too mature or adult to put on there. At first I kind of accepted that. I was like, okay, because I watched Love, Victor both seasons, and they have teenagers wanting to have sex for the first time. And I'm like, yeah, that's a little too adult. But then I was thinking no, there are sex scenes in Marvel movies. So clearly Disney Plus is totally cool with having, sex scenes in their movies. 100% Eternals definitely has a sex scene. They're in some Iron Man movies. Yeah, they're Marvel has these. So why would Love, Victor be any more adult? Because they don't even have any sex scenes. They just have kids talking about it. And they're talking about it in a very sex positive way. There's really no reason that a high school student can't watch Love, Victor on Disney Plus. They don't actually do anything inappropriate whatsoever, and they don't even do anything that mature. They just talk about stuff. And the stuff they talk about isn't that mature either. This is easily something that could exist on Disney Plus. But it's queer, so that's adult. Which brings me back to at what age is it appropriate? And then we have Andy Mack. And I will say Andy Mack is partially on Disney Plus, and is great rep. I couldn't watch it. I just looked up kind of clips and stuff, and I think they did a good job with that. However, most of the episodes don't actually exist on Disney Plus, because one of the actors, who is a main character, was arrested for soliciting a minor, which is atrocious. That's absolutely disgusting. That is horrible. I think anyone who, does anything inappropriate like that with a minor should spend the rest of their life in prison. I'm very tough on that. So they took out every episode that he was in. So the only show that Disney has, or the only time Disney has done good LGBTQ representation, has been marred by the fact that they also hired a sexual predator. Way to go. Being straight is normalized. We see heteronormative everywhere. It's ubiquitous and inescapable. Same with cis-normativity. This goes back to my straight coming out joke in Love, Simon. Unless you're something other than straight or cis, you probably wouldn't even notice how much it is everywhere. I feel so bad for ace and arrow people who just want to watch a movie and they're bombarded with romance and everything. It's ridiculous. I'm quoting Chapek in a statement that he released, and it's, yes, we need to use our influence to promote that good by telling inclusive stories, but also by standing up for the rights of all. So I've already talked about some movies, but I kind of want to talk a little bit more. Okay, I want to talk more about Turning Red and Luca. I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry. Okay, a little sorry. I'm a little insane. Okay, Turning Red and Luca. So these films came out within a year of each other. Both are from Pixar. I wanted to be comparable as possible. Disney is a very big company. Each of these studios, Pixar, the Buena Vista one, I think it's called Disney Animation now, Marvel, Star Wars, or Lucasfilm, whatever, they all have their own head of those divisions. I mean, all those heads answer to Big Disney, but it's very bureaucratic. Lots of red tape. Okay. So in Luca, the main characters are Luca, who's 13, and Alberto, who's 14. And in Turning Red, the main character is Meme. So Luca had a very clear and blatant queer allegory to the story that the creator, Enrico Casarosa, and Disney themselves really shut down. They were not about it. They said I was gonna name match them. They said Luca and Alberto were too young. So cut to 9 months later, Turning Red comes out, and it shows a girl the same age as those boys being a boy crazy teen. So which is it? Is Luca too young? Or do you just not want him to be gay? Or is he too young to be gay? Which is no such thing. If you're old enough to have crushes and they're same-sex ones, then you're old enough to be gay. The only arguments against this are let's be queer again. They're fueled by hatred and oppression. They are. Pixar also shows Riley from Inside Out as having a boy, she's imagined to be her dream boyfriends that she's a crush on. Toy Story shows heteronormative toy romance. A big point in The Incredibles is the daughter Violet's crush on a boy. Up has the most beautiful love story depicted in a film between a man and a woman. Fight me. Even WALL-E shows a opposite sex coded, heteronormative coded love between fucking robots. And we don't have a same sex couple. Again, because bigots. And it's not just Pixar, Marvel. Stucky. I'm with you to the end of the line. I mean, come on, this is queer baiting. Queer baiting. And smarter people than me have argued this. Tiger photos. We see you, Disney. Valkyrie was supposed to be bi in Thor Ragnarok, and that was cut from that. And let's not forget Star Wars. Storm Pilot. Let Storm Pilot fly. And plus the blink and you miss it same-sex scene at the end of Rise of Skywalker. I mean, woohoo! Representation. Now, some creators, specifically in Pixar, have said that they wanted to have references to queer romance in their films, but they were made to remove said scenes by Disney. I believe that. You don't need to offer me any more proof. Yeah, you said it. That sounds very effing believable. In a Variety article, I've read that employees of the animation studio allege that Disney corporate executives have demanded cuts from nearly every moment of overtly gay affection, regardless of when there is protest from both the creative teams and the executive leadership at Pixar. Listen, Disney has been historically homophobic, and I'm going to assume also transphobic, and you know what? They continue to be. But they see the financial value in slapping a rainbow on Mickey ears during June. That's Pride Month. And they see the financial value in queer baiting and queer coding because the LGBTQ community still in 22 has so little representation that even a blink and you miss it or a vague or subtle hint will make them happy because that's all they get. And that's not enough. Disney needs to do better. Everyone really needs to do better because queer and trans youth are being hurt by lawmakers. And that's wrong and it's disgusting. And it sounds dumb, but having queer and trans and gender nonconforming people be normalized in the media We'll create a generation who are more accepting, and then we can stop these bigoted, hateful, vile laws. And we can stop and, we can reduce the amount that entire groups of people are being discriminated against and oppressed, which benefits everyone. Thank you for watching. I have no idea why anyone would watch all this. And you know what? Please go watch Guardians of Justice. DC, please make Midnight or an Apollo movie. And Disney, Wiccan and Hulkling, do the thing and do better. Farewell.